Back on air.
Hey, am I back?
Yep, you're back on. Yep.
Okay,
Hmm.
great. Maybe perhaps we could go to somewhere else. So, I actually had another question for you. Um, I wanted to know about how you're talking about the everlasting covenant and mainly specifically the new covenant. I have a question. Um, how do you look at the new covenant as a renewed covenant, uh, as distinct from the old covenant?
I don't see where it's spoken of it being distinct from the old covenant when Christ clearly states he didn't come to destroy the law or the prophets. He didn't come to destroy that. So how are you talking about something that's distinct from something that was never destroyed?
Got it. So let's see. Um, you said I just want to go ahead and pull up Hebrews chapter, I believe it's 7 or 8 or 9. I'm going to go ahead and start with Hebrews chapter 7. So I'm going to go to pull that up real quick. Hebrews chapter 7. Okay, so in Hebrews chapter 7, right? Let's just say I go ahead and I believe that, the new covenant is just the old covenant renewed. Therefore, I really shouldn't find anything new about it because therefore it would literally be new. And also, I should not find it being compared to something since it's only the old covenant renewed. But if I do find it being, sounding distinct, can you explain it for me? So here it is. This is, let's see, I'm in Hebrews chapter 7, and I'm going to go at verse, let's say, here, verse 14. It says this: For it is evident that our Lord sprang out of Judah, of which tribe Moses spake nothing concerning the priesthood. It is yet therefore far more evident, for that there is a similitude of Melchizedek, there ariseth another priest, who is made not after the law of the carnal commandment, but after the power of an endless life. For he testifies that thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. For there is verily a disannulling of the commandment going before the weakness and unprofitableness thereof. For the law made nothing perfect, but the bringing in of a better hope did, by which we draw near unto God. My question is, how is it that we already see that the law is being compared to a better hope in verse 19? In verse 18, it speaks about disannulling, which is canceling, right, of the commandment, right, before the weakness and unprofitableness thereof. In other words, whatever this commandment is, it's canceled, and that includes all of its weakness and unprofitableness that goes with it. In verse 17, there's someone that testifies that they're a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. This order is not after the commandment that's disannulled. The commandment that's disannulled is Levitical, not Melchizedek. So just in light of that right there alone, how can you say that the new covenant is not being distinct from the old covenant in light of these verses?
Okay, the order of Melchizedek precedes the Levitical priesthood. That was there before, right? We come to the wilderness. When they come into the wilderness, the Most High tell Israel that I want you to be a nation of priests unto me. Want the whole nation to be priests. It says, this you shall tell the children of Israel, that I want you to be a nation of priests, all of you. The whole nation was supposed to be priests. We read forward a little bit more. They consummate the covenant, the blood covenant. They break the covenant, and then right after they break the covenant, Moses says, "Who is on the Lord's side? Come over here." Only the tribe of Levi move over on Moses' side. Because they did that, the Most High placed them with a blessing, giving them a temporary priesthood. That's what he did, for what they did. A temporary priesthood. Now, that priesthood was not profitable, as we can see. That's what Paul is addressing here. As you read it right here, it says that wait a minute, right here, you read it. For there is verily a disannulling of the commandment going before, for the weakness and the unprofitableness thereof. The priesthood, the Levitical priesthood, didn't profit the nation of Israel. It was temporary. It was the weakness of it. Okay, so now it's going back to the priesthood that supersedes it, the original priesthood, which is the order of Melchizedek, which Christ is coming in. This is what Paul is giving us the understanding of. The Levitical priesthood was something that was temporarily given to Levi because of what they did in the wilderness when they sided with Moses to come on the Lord's side, but it was temporarily. Now he's pointing back to the original priesthood of Melchizedek, which Christ is under. Because as you read earlier,
Okay, so
Christ came out of Judah and not from Levi.
Okay, so aren't those distinctions, if you're talking about there's a temporary priesthood in place of something that came before it, is that not a distinction between the old covenant Levitical temporary priesthood that was set up and the order of Melchizedek that preceded that temporary priesthood? Isn't that a distinction between the two priesthoods?
No, that would be a clarification.
How do you get a clarification from people who are marking out differences in the New Testament here in Hebrews 8 when it says, but the bringing in of a better hope did. That better hope is the new covenant. How do you get a distinction between those? How do you get a continuation or a clarification between these two priesthoods that are being spoken about distinctively in Hebrews 7?
Because you are negating the fact is that originally Levi was not supposed to be the priest in the first place. You're negating that fact that originally the whole nation was supposed to be priests. That's how it was supposed to go. And you looking at something that was put in temporarily as something that was permanent. So now when it's reverting back to what it was supposed to be originally, you looking at it as some kind of change or distinction, but it's a clarification that listen, this is how it's supposed to go from the beginning.
Right. Okay. So you assume that I'm not looking at the priesthood of the people. That assumption is correct because I'm looking at what Hebrews 7 is actually highlighting. It's highlighting the order of Melchizedek and the Levitical priesthood of Aaron, right? A nation of priests and things like that. That's nowhere in the picture. What's in the picture is Aaron, Melchizedek. Those are the distinctions. So now, because I don't have a lot of time, I'm going to move on to another one. Now, this is Hebrews 8. I'm going to ask you the same question again. I can go to 9, 10, 11, and 12, but let's go to 8. It says this. When you look at Hebrews 8, basically it's just a whole rehash of Jeremiah 31, which we rehashed before. But listen to the conclusion of everything that he's saying. Now, you think this will be in verse 13, you think he would say, okay, this is his perfect opportunity to say, do you see how this is continual? But instead, he says, in speaking of a new covenant, he makes the first one obsolete. And what is becoming obsolete is growing old and is ready to vanish away. So my question is this. When you look at the verse, he's saying that the first one, which would be the old covenant, is obsolete because of the new covenant. That is a distinction. Then he says, and what is becoming obsolete is growing old and ready to vanish away. What is becoming obsolete is actually that big, huge temple that's going to be destroyed, that was going to be destroyed in 70 AD. So my question is this. In light of how he could read Jeremiah 31:31, why is it that he's making a distinction of Jeremiah 31:31 with the new covenant when he should be making a clarification, as you would say, or a continuation, but he's not doing that? Can you explain that?
You're speaking of verse 13, right?
I'm speaking. Yes, I am.
Okay. In verse 13, where it says, a new covenant That's in italics. I mean, that was not in the original Greek. That was added. Okay, so first of all, we see clearly that was not even in the original text. So Paul isn't speaking of no new covenant there. They put that in there trying to throw people off. Okay, that's the first thing you need to look at. It's all in italics. Okay, so he ain't speaking of no new covenant there. That rules that out immediately. So this ain't speaking of no new covenant here because it's not even in the text there. Now, in that did he saith, he have made the first old, like I said before. He's talking about the covenant is old of how they understood it. Because when Christ came, Christ was giving them the spiritual understanding of the law. That was not being given in the Old Testament. That's how when he brings it in the spiritual understanding of it, that's how he's making it, the old one, look old. Because the old one, there was not being dropped the spiritual understanding of it. The people didn't quite understand the law in a spiritual sense of it. This is what Paul is referencing here. Okay? And that's how he made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old, meaning is growing old, is ready to vanish away. He is speaking again, not of the laws of God. He's speaking again of the understanding that they had and how they was keeping it under carnal understanding. That's why when it comes to the New Testament, it says, for love is the keeping of the commandments. So now they understanding on a spiritual level to keep the law, we must keep it through love, not robotic. You can't keep it according to how they was keeping it in the Old Testament. So this he's referencing here your understanding to your application of the law. How there is an old way of doing it and there's a new way of doing it.
Which one is that, brother? Hold on. What text was that you said? What text was that you said? Which one you just said was italicized? Where is it at?
In Hebrews chapter 8, verse 13, where it says a new covenant. That's all in italics. That's not in the text.
Right. But here it is right here, though. Here's another one right here, so we know that, you know what I mean, even though it's not right there, that it's definitely in some other manuscripts right here over in the later chapters. Chapter 10, watch what it says. It says,
where you at, chapter 10? Where you at?
Chapter 10, verse 8, right? Here's chapter 10, verse 8. Let's see. It says, let's hit 7. It says, then said I, let's hit 6. It says, let's hit 5. Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he said, sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me. And burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin thou hast not no pleasure. Then said I, lo, I come in the volume of the book. It is written of me, to do thy will, O God. Above when he said, sacrifice and offering, burnt offerings and offerings for sin, thou wouldest not, neither hadst pleasure therein, which are offered by the law. Then said I, lo, I come to do thy will, O God. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second one. It says, by the which we are all sanctified through offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all, right? Now, my thing is this is we know that he took away the first, that he may establish the second, right? So let me ask you this question. Up under the first covenant, the testament, up under the law, when they made the tabernacle, did it have veils in it?
Yeah.
And so could anybody enter into that, or it just had to be the high priest?
You're talking about the holy place or the most holy place?
Yes. Both places. Could anybody enter into those places?
No.
Right. The distinction between this testament and the Old Testament is that the very temple and the veils that we see are basically the veils of the mind that God has taken away, and those very veils that he's talking about, it says we can enter and present ourselves as a living sacrifice as often as we may. And we don't have to stand distant from Mount Sinai or be blocked off by any veils which he grants. But we can come unto God. You know what I'm saying? And he said that. He said that in when he talked about, he says, you should not worship in this place nor Jerusalem. For he says, for salvation is of the Jews. He said, but the time is, or the hour coming, or now is, that the true worshipers should worship God in spirit and in truth. So my thing is this is, can we enter in a new way, whereas previous through the law, we couldn't even come nigh even to the holy place? Is there a distinction there?